Good morning, Withan.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning again. And here we are with Advanta-STAR. We're having a discussion. Today we're talking about, are we back to selling again, or have we completely eliminated the we're taking orders part of the automobile journey right now?
Yeah, are we back to the deal? We're going to discuss the comeback of old school selling. And
So, over the past several years with the COVID shutdowns and dealer inventory shortages, et cetera, it kind of developed this mindset that we only have so many vehicles. We got to make as much money as we can. So the consumer's going to understand why we're jacking the price up 3, 4, 5 grand, et cetera. So what do you think, Within? Have we gotten away from, just taking orders, or have we worked our way back inventory wise to going back to good old fashioned selling and the like? What say you?
uh, Unfortunately, we're definitely away from order taking. Uh, Most of the dealerships here now have more than enough product. Inventories are actually getting too high at some of the different franchises. And the problem is that instead of going from order taking and $10,000 ADMs, uh, they went directly to how much below invoice can I advertise and how much can I blow out. And so
Yeah,
we've gone from one style of not selling vehicles to another style of not selling vehicles.
yeah. And that's the thing, when COVID hit, nobody knew what was going to happen, and there was just an incredible surge of sales that a lot of folks didn't realize. I remember walking into a dealership in Florida that was one of the largest Toyota retailers in the state, and they had nothing on the ground, literally nothing. And, when you make a visit there, it looked like stadium parking with inventory. And so we talked to the managers in there, and they said, "Oh, we sold 900 units last month." I said, "How did you sell 900 off an empty shelf?" They said, "We sold them prior to them hitting the ground. Everything that was when it got invoiced and we got a shipping order on it, it was pre-sold." And
Yeah,
I
on
said, "Well,
paper, it looked beautiful. I mean, that's been the dream. I mean, I think it was 10 years ago, Ford popped up, and it's always one of the manufacturers pops up and says, we're not going to have dealers stocking cars anymore. We're going to every car is going to be a sold order. But of course, it always ends up, well, people don't want to buy things sight unseen, and you can't sell without inventory.
hmm
But during COVID, people understood that was the only way it was going to be, and so
yeah,
they sold orders only, or as it is with the imports, they sold off of incoming only.
correct." And that used to be the key. I remember again 30, 35 years ago, um, with the Toyota store I worked in, they'd have shipping sheets, you know, taped to the sales manager's window, and it's like, "Is this available? Is this available? It's red, it's blue, it's green. Which one do you want?" And they understood the consumers because that's the only way, the way everybody was selling. So it wasn't just that one Toyota store. Everybody had to fight for the inventory, and you didn't have a whole lot on the ground. But to that point, so the inventories now coming back. One of the terms I hear is value-based selling. And like that plays right into our wheelhouse. Features, benefits, how does it benefit the consumer? Why do they need this particular product? Where does it compare versus others? Because it used to be under COVID, if you have it, it's red. I want blue. I don't have blue, but if you want this one, this is what it is. It's 3, 4, 5 grand over. And if you don't want it, the guy or gal standing behind you will. And so a lot of people bought under duress because they needed a car or felt economically they couldn't wait. And so they bought something they may not have completely fallen in love with or really wanted because of availability. So now you got, like you said, you got inventories that have increased and there is selection. So a lot of these folks are sitting there saying, okay, now I want to buy what I really want. So that goes into brand loyalty. Because a lot of people say, I may have gone in looking at a Toyota, they had none, and I had to, consider maybe a Honda for the first time, maybe a Hyundai for the first time, or Kia, etc. So, but those folks are now finding themselves what, five, $6,000 upside down, and they can't get out
Oh,
of that car.
only if they put 20,000 down.
Yeah. Yeah,
We've
and
seen cases where people are uh, in a basic $30,000 car where people are almost $30,000 upside down.
yeah. And that's unfortunate. And the dealers who chose to do business that way, they felt that they could justify it with the customer, and many the customers did buy into that. But now the reality is they're never going back to that dealer. I mean, because they're
Yeah,
going to feel that guy or gal, stiffed them, and now they're in a untenable position where, like you said, they're 20, 30 grand upside down, and they're stuck in a vehicle that they don't want, and they have no reasonable way of getting rid of it. Um, so, I talked to dealers as well that their strategy during COVID was we're going to do one price selling. It's going to be MSRP. We've been here X number of years. We don't want to take advantage of our customers or the situation. We're in it for the long haul. And it seems like that to me was the better play because they're the ones now that they have inventory, their reputation wasn't sullied in all of this.
and
Uh,
their customers can come back because they aren't 30,000 upside down. So
correct,
they can
correct.
reasonably trade out of a 3-year-old car. I
Yep.
mean, it used to be, people could trade in every 2 years. You know, the price of doing business
Yeah.
has gone up and the depreciation on cars has increased a bit because, when the price goes up and the inventory comes back, the depreciation is going to hit. I mean,
Hmm.
well, the flip side of that was during COVID, we saw used cars coming through the auctions higher than sticker price. And so
Right.
a dealership couldn't be blamed for selling a 2-year-old Civic, for over the original MSRP because he bought it for over the original MSRP at the auction.
Yeah, I mean you make a great point. I mean, back then a 2-year-old car was selling used for, more than a brand new one, and it's because of the scarcity of the new ones.
Yeah,
What I was
because what
yeah,
caused
but
the what caused all the inventory to dry up wasn't that it was being bought up. I mean, it was, but you had an actual shortage. You know, I remember the Automotive News article when Ford sent home all of its plant operations workers. Everybody screwing together F-150s went home because either they had to or they were getting sicker every day. And so Ford had to close its plants and send everybody home. And that happened worldwide.
yeah,
Dealer, the plants shut down, but even if the plants didn't shut down, the supply chain, the engine plant shut down or the
yeah,
electronics plant shut down. And so what happens is when you have a huge shortage like that and you can't get, 100 new cars a month like you used to, but then you go to auction and you try to buy cars, but what happens when 100 dealers are trying to buy 5 times as many used cars as before? Yeah,
yeah.
the price soars through the roof. It's simple market
Certainly,
economics.
certainly. And that's what happened too. You have fewer used cars on the market now. And it's this the dynamic is those cars are still bringing big money. What amazed me is, the banks financing that much overvalue on these used cars at the time. And the scuttlebutt was, well, if Bank A won't, Bank B will. And
And on
so,
the new ones as well. Yeah,
correct,
it seemed
correct,
really it did seem really irresponsible, but again, it was either that or not make any loans at all.
correct. So, they got a lot of water on their portfolio as well. And so now you're looking at the position where, the average price of a new vehicle is over 50 grand now. The average payment on a 60-month contract is over 1,000. So from an affordability standpoint, people are scrambling at the dealer level. How do I get something where most of my customers really aren't in a position to pay, 7, 8, 9% and carry back 1,000 a month to park that vehicle in the driveway?
Right. And just the just the figures of the interest rates are scaring a lot of consumers away.
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
they saw, 2, 3, 5%, 6%. And you and me were in the business a long time. We remember actually getting people bought at 19%. You,
21 in some
yeah,
cases.
oh,
Yeah, back in the,
absolutely.
I
Going,
remember my
hey, that's
first
a
vehicle.
credit
Yeah.
card interest rate on
Yeah.
that Buick. What's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah. Again, my first car is 21%. Now that was in the early 80s, when the economy was in a lot different shape than it was prior to COVID.
Yeah,
You
my
know,
first car was 7.7%.
yeah.
That was a bought special incentive rate. Could you
Yeah.
imagine
Right.
someone
Right.
10 years ago uh, taking a 7.7% auto loan and
Yeah.
as a special incentive?
Yeah, the last car I bought for my wife was a 22 model and it's 0% for 72
Right.
months. I mean, that's free money back then, but
Yeah, our
nobody's
company
doing
car
that unless it's
was
incentive based
0% at
now,
72
right?
months.
So,
72. Yeah.
yeah, the market's going to change. It's going to, I think, economically, if we see some improvements in, certainly in the bond markets and certainly the interest rates and, the Fed, comes around and we see it they feel compelled to drop some of the rates. I think that'll be great. The other thing is accessing inventory because now what's happening and the dealers are finding that they're having to go to other sources other than auction to buy used cars because of the price. And so they're basically setting up inventory purchasing uh, setups in their stores.
They're buying
'Cause,
them off the street.
buying them off the street. So they're doing what um, CarMax, Carvana. I mean, Carvana, 75% of their inventory came from private owners. And so, you look at their bottom line and the amount of money that they're making, the dealers who are succeeding right now, they're having to do private acquisitions and or going to the old well, the service drive to acquire vehicles to sell.
Yep.
Customer comes in and, they got $500 worth of work that needs to be done on that car. That should be an easy switch. Hey, when I show you,
Yep.
introduce you to a new car salesperson, maybe we can get you out of this one, lower your note, and we'll go ahead and take care of that $500 repair. Now I got
Yep.
a
And
car that I
the
can
old
put in.
saw, the old saw, hey, we're really looking for a trade-in like yours, which was usually
Yeah.
just, now let's sell this guy a new car and we'll auction off that piece he's driving. Now that's actually the truth when they tell somebody that.
Look, anything that has four wheels or more, they're looking. And the best place to get a vehicle is from your service customers or have a setup where, you are literally on the phone dialing for dollars. I mean, that's how real estate people get their leads and acquire inventory to market and sell. Uh, the dealerships and the dealer groups that have adopted that philosophy over the last few years, they haven't had any shortage of iron to sell. It's more used or pre-owned, but if you're a dealership, you've got to have front end sales. Service carries the load in a lot of ways, and if you got a body shop and parts, but you've got to have some sort of a mechanism to generate that income on the front end.
Yeah, because wholesale used car prices are generally on a downward trend, since COVID's been over. But the thing is, it would be like saying, uh, Cheech and Chong are on a downward trend as far as how much THC are in their systems because they just roll down the windows on the Impala for a couple minutes and let a little bit of fresh air in. I mean, the used car prices were extremely high
Yeah.
before. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, they've
super.
come down to a little bit different level, but again, when you're looking at a vehicle that, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, sold for 3, 5, 10 grand over, that individual is going to keep it a little longer unless they're going to get some way to get out of it.
So
Uh,
that still pinches the market. Yep,
Correct.
exactly.
Correct. Now let's talk a
But
little bit here. Yeah, let's pivot a little bit to the electric vehicle market. Um, Electric vehicles seem to be, as far as on the pre-owned side, extremely affordable because the market got flooded when some of the rental car companies dropped a lot of their EV inventory.
And what happened
Because
was Hertz went into EVs huge. Uh, I mean, our office production manager uh, went to Florida on vacation, and they basically pushed an EV on her
Mhm.
at the airport. And oh, she had a horrible time when she was coming back because the old bring the tank full or we're going to charge you. Well, in this case, it was, can I make it back to the airport? I mean,
Yeah.
she was showing zero range, and again, does a rental make sense as an EV? I mean,
Mhm.
your typical original EV purchaser it was a third or fourth car. It was a person who owned a private home, a single dwelling home with a garage where a 220-volt charger could be professionally installed. They could plug it in overnight. But someone on vacation does not have a garage. They're going to a hotel. I mean, if a hotel has charging stations at all, how many charging stations do they have? And uh, a harried vacation dweller with a 3-year-old and a husband dragging around Florida, are they going to be able to park in the proper place to plug it in at night and charge it when they're at the hotel, or will the spots already be taken, or will they not
Mhm.
even remember to do it when they get back after a hard day of beating off Mickey Mouse's advances and getting scared by the guy with no nose or whatever it is. And so, and I guess Hertz found out. And so, yeah, what was it? A year ago, 2 years ago?
It was last summer.
Yeah, last summer they dumped them. They because even if they were able to push someone into one, they had a dissatisfied customer that's never going to rent from them again because they had a
Yeah.
vehicle that they couldn't refuel
Yeah.
basically. They were
Yeah.
trying to get to the airport to make their flight, and they didn't know if the vehicle's going to make it.
Well, the one thing about them dumping all that inventory, it made the acquisition cost on the used side a lot lower. Okay. Because a lot of those vehicles, some of them were, Tesla Model 3s. And I know there's a used car lot close to my home where there's probably 50 of them on a lot. Um, they were still eligible last summer, and they may still be on some of the EV credits. So you could buy a used, Model 3, let's say, for under, 20 grand with the
Oh,
incentive. And
and
so,
plus they
and
must have
so,
very low miles too.
yeah, well, even so, because, they took pennies on a dollar just to dump them. And what it did was it dropped the value across everybody's Model 3s. I know my son dumped his a year and a half ago, and that was right before they had a price adjustment from the manufacturer. Everybody remembers when they cut the price substantially on the vehicles.
I think it
And
was 7 to 10,000, depending on which exact
exactly,
model.
and exactly. So
But
when
they
you
all have
look,
been doing that,
yeah,
and some of the claims are that the technology is maturing, and so we can lower the price. But
yeah,
some of
but
it is these vehicles have been mandated. We've dumped billions into developing things like the Mach-E, things like the Hummer EV, and the anything from that to Neros and whatever. And
yeah,
so at a certain point, uh, the prices all came down, and
yeah.
the prices of all the internal combustion vehicles has definitely not gone down, it's gone up. And so
Yeah,
you
but the
have a
demand for the ICE vehicles
separation of
has
the gut.
increased.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the politics of the electric vehicles, either you're for them or against them, as far as, but there's a practical side to the vehicles. There are some consumers that just absolutely love them. They fit their lifestyle.
Yep.
Where I
And
think
as
the
a certain
pushback,
niche
yeah, yeah, well,
producing a
and there
certain
always
amount of
is.
vehicles,
Yeah, there always is.
producing a certain amount of electric vehicles uh, would work. Like for instance, sports car. Let's say anything. A Subaru WRX. Subaru WRX in 2002 was a hot ticket. And, all the kids wanted one. Heck, some of the middle-aged guys wanted one.
Like
And
you,
so,
right?
yeah, exactly. So you had this little pocket rocket thing.
Right.
And as a niche from Subaru, selling a certain number of WRXs, it was great. Dealerships made good money on them. People were happy with them. But then what happened was the industry looked at that and says, "Oh, we should make one of those." And suddenly you have all kinds of pretenders popping up. You had the Lancer Evo, some argument, whether that came first or not, and you had everything. Cobalt SS turbos. You had Ford Focus RS, Ford Focus ST. Ford made two different hot rockets. They made the Focus and they made the Fiesta. And so suddenly, when a market gets saturated, and now of course you have almost none. I mean, the WRX sells very few models because the market got saturated and people got tired of it. You could buy
Yeah.
them anywhere and everywhere. And the same thing happened with electrics, although it was exasperated by the fact that this wasn't just, oh, Tesla's making a bunch of money off of these cars. Tesla's selling a bunch of electrics. Let's make an electric. No, it was Tesla's making electrics, and the government says, well, everyone should make electrics. In fact, government of California said everyone should only make electrics. And so when you have a market for something that's maybe, I don't know, 5%, 7%, where people want a product, and either the manufacturer says, let's make nothing but that product, or the government says you're going to make nothing but that product. Well, then suddenly the value of that item is going to
Hmm.
plunge.
Yeah.
And so it's just a natural thing with so many manufacturers. I mean, it was great when it was a niche, but when everyone makes electric cars, then suddenly it's not a niche, and it's not even anything fancy. I mean, one of the things that a guy with a Tesla loved was he was special, just like the guy with the WRX or the guy with the Corvette, or the guy with the purple uh, Saturn Redline Saturn Sky, whatever it was. Part of the electric car mystique was all the other cars burn gas. Mine is electric.
But there was a certain amount of exclusivity when Tesla first came out, right? They were the
Exactly.
first ones on a mass scale. They certainly had a lot of support through government subsidies to get that product launched and get it into the market. But, when they first launched the Model S, it was to a specific price point, six figures. And those people paid for the price of that technology to get them out on the road, etc. And then the
First
next big
adopters.
thing was we're going to do mass scale. We're going to build a Model 3 that's 30, 35,000, where everybody can afford it if they want one. And to your point, the government stepped in and said, we're going to regulate this and mandate this. And some of the states did, a lot more mandating than others. And the OEMs to compete, followed suit. So you saw I think one of the first ones I saw, go all in on this was Volvo several years ago. They said by X model year, I think it was 2030, they were going to be nothing but electric. Okay.
A lot of them
There's a
did.
lot of
Jaguar made
European
that
companies
claim.
that have made
Uh,
that commitment. But you and I
General
remember,
Motors even made the
well,
claim that by
General Motors, yeah,
2035.
yeah, that's what they did. And, it took General Motors till what, this model year or late last model year to come up with that $35,000 Equinox that they promised, from several years ago. So what's happening is, you look at Jaguar. I mean, they're basically shut down their, historical legacy builds to go all in on new electric vehicles. But the
Yeah,
problem
they only
now
make
is
one
the
internal
market's
combustion
changed.
vehicle. Yeah, they only make the
Market's
F
changed,
Pace,
and especially in this country, and if
but they're
that's the
backing
next,
down as well because
yeah,
the F Pace 2025 was supposed to be the last year for the Jaguar F Pace.
yeah,
There is a 2026 F Pace on the retail and the press websites.
yeah. Well, to that point, again, they've had to adapt because, again, it's if I want an EV, it's got to be my choice, not because somebody put a gun in my head to buy one. Okay. And, you've got a lot of folks who are very passionate on both sides of this. So, what I don't want to do is get into that, ruffle any feathers. But the
Yeah,
bottom
but you
line
have
is
practical
there
considerations.
has to be practical
You have a house,
consideration.
Mike. You have a garage. You
Yeah.
could uh, perceivably get
Oh,
an
yeah.
EV. I mean, your vacations, down where you drive 1,000 miles would be somewhat disrupted.
Absolutely.
Charging infrastructure has gotten a lot better,
But it's
but think
not.
about the guy
What do one who
who's in
lives
a
in an apartment
condo,
complex?
yeah,
Where's he going to
apartment
charge? Or where's
complex.
she going to charge? Let's not
Yeah,
count the ladies out because there's a lot of ladies driving Model 3s. Okay.
yeah,
And they're considered some of these other vehicles. And I'll be honest with you, you know, the way my wife drives back and forth to work, most EV owners drive less than 50 miles a day. So the idea about range anxiety, it really to their, to the EV crowd, is range anxiety. It's moot. Okay, my wife drives less than 50 miles a day. She would be
if
a
that
candidate
vehicle
for
is
one.
not the only vehicle in the household.
Well, that's the point I'm going to make.
Because we have
Yeah,
a very specific thing where we are
yeah,
that occurs. I mean, if you have a Model S uh, between say May 30th and September 30th in New Orleans or anywhere on the Gulf Coast, Florida or wherever, you're not going to only have a Model S. You're also going to have something with a big gas tank, and you're going to keep the gas tank all the way top because
especially
when
during hurricane
you're
season.
yeah, when you're evacuating,
Yep,
I mean, there's the old bugaboo of, oh, if you're stranded on the highway and your EV, you're going to run out of charge. Well, no, you're not, because if the EV doesn't move, the charge doesn't go down. But on
yeah,
the other hand, you're also going to be sweating your butt off because if you run the air conditioning in your EV, then it will die in traffic while you're waiting to
yeah.
be evacuated.
Well, all you got to do is go look at Florida from a couple of years ago. They've had two major hurricanes hit them, especially coming through the Tampa area. And the individuals who had to evacuate with their single owner household of an EV, they had problems. Okay. And then the other problem is you leave the EV behind. What happens when salt water gets into a lithium battery?
Yep, it's either done or it catches fire.
Correct. Okay.
the
And so
the
those are
sealing and everything on all those battery packs in recent days is much better. The
much better,
last
right?
mass fire we saw was it was either
Jacksonville
the
Airport a
the
couple of
the
weeks ago,
Fisker
there was an EV.
Karmas.
No,
Yeah, one, yeah,
Jacksonville Airport a couple of weeks ago, there was a major fire where an EV exploded, caught
yeah,
fire, and took out about 50 other cars. You know, so
yes.
they're
That's the
not sure
issue.
what ignited it, but you
No,
know,
because EVs are actually statistically less likely to catch fire than an internal
agreed,
combustion car.
agreed.
But
These
the
things keep
problem
happening.
is, well, no, the problem is when if they do catch fire, it's
Oh
going to be
yeah,
a much worse fire, and it can't be put out by conventional means.
correct, correct. You know, so I mean, there's challenges, and you know, we could go on for days about some of the pro and the con. You know,
Yeah,
is there a market for EVs? Absolutely. And the early adopters paid a big price to have that privilege. But you know, I used to have the philosophy about folks who were looking at that first generation Prius. You know, it was a quirky little vehicle.
yeah,
And you know, I came up with the slogan, you know, if I'm going to be green, I want to be seen. Because a lot of people back 10, 15 years ago, Camry made a hybrid. They couldn't sell them. Okay, looked the same as every other Camry. It
yep. Had
wasn't
a little blue
unique.
badge
And yeah, it had a little blue badge. Same thing with Honda Accord. General Motors tried to do an
in the Civic.
EV, a hybrid Sierra, and a hybrid Yukon, and a
There was a
hybrid Tahoe.
hybrid
Yeah,
Dodge Durango one year.
yeah.
Uh,
But the bottom line is, you know, again, this is going back 10, 15 years. And again, technology's advanced so much since then. But every dealership got one. And it was the oldest car of truck in the inventory because nobody really wanted it. Okay. So, but the younger folks, and I can tell you, you know, I'd consider one, but you know, when we were talking about this, my wife and I, the pro and the con, you know, she drives a Buick Envision. It's about a 35,000 automobile. A comparable EV at the time was $25,000 more. Now, you take away the credit, 7,500, it made it a little closer. But
yeah,
even if gas was $5 a gallon, I can buy a lot of gas for 25 grand. difference. Okay. And when gas was climbing two, three, $4 in some markets, that's when you saw people really say, okay, I'm going to jump into it
Yep.
and test the waters. Or like Hertz did, we're going to go ahead and see if we can capitalize on this EV push. Well,
Because
it
if
didn't
Tesla
work out
hadn't
for either one of them.
if,
Okay.
if
It
Tesla hadn't chopped their prices down, and if they had not ordered so many of them, and if they had a lot of ifs, they could have made a reasonable revenue from renting them, and then they could have gotten most of their money back when they sold them. But
Well, I think you made the point earlier in our conversation. When Tesla was the only game in town, they could pretty much do whatever they want and charge whatever they wanted. And the other thing that happened was Tesla's, direct to consumer sales model, they were making such high profits, over 30% on each retail sale. Well, first off, there's nowhere near that kind of profitability from the OEM to the dealer, and certainly none of that between the dealer and the consumer. And so that's why you saw, uh, General Motors wanting to do, or Ford specifically, want to do the direct-to-consumer sale on EVs, and you saw how that blew up in their face. They had to change that, and because they got so much blowback from the dealers. Um, you know, General Motors had some issues with that as well. But they're committed to even, with the changes, Mary Barra says, look, we're going to a large part of our portfolio. But in the early discussions, they were getting rid of all of their ICE engines. And I remember
right,
5 years ago talking to
2035
dealers.
it was
Yeah,
supposed to be
dealers had
over.
said, do they have a plan B? And they would wink and say, "Oh yeah, we got a plan B. We just can't talk about it because it wasn't politically correct to talk about it." I mean, look at the
Plus, if
blowback
you're if
Toyota
you're
got,
yeah
okay? Because they said we're not jumping into EVs like everybody else. We're going to take a more measured hybrid approach. And now you see who's laughing, okay?
Yeah,
Toyota
because
all
it
the way to
makes
the
way
bank.
more sense to take the same amount of lithium ion batteries
Yeah,
and make 10 hybrids that get 30% better fuel economy than it
yeah,
is to build one EV with that, which will
yeah.
save the gasoline of maybe three automobiles at the
All right.
most.
Well, we can go all, like I said, all day long on talking about the merits. I love the technology, and I know the technology is getting better. The range anxiety issue is being solved. You got quick chargers. One of the most remarkable things I've seen is the electric Formula E, excuse me,
Formula E, yeah.
Formula E circuit. Well, the first time I heard that, it sounded like a turbo dynamo revving up when these things were doing their instantaneous velocity from the starting grid and just revving up and sailing around a track. I mean, eventually you're going to see that technology, which I mean, motor racing has done that for decades. That technology comes into regular passenger cars. And so being able to do a quick charge to 80% in 10 minutes or less, that's on the horizon. I mean, it's not 10 years away. It may be 10 months away in
With
some
solid
cases.
state batteries, you could do a
Correct.
100%
And they're
0
getting
to
away with getting
100%.
away from a lot of the lithium dependent batteries, and going to nickel, cadmium, and
Sodium.
other salt, yeah, other salts correctly that are
Sodium's not as
safer.
dense, but it's safer.
Exactly, exactly. So as the technology evolves, so will the infrastructure. We talked earlier about on vacation. Some of the hotels, a premium hotel will have maybe 4, 5 charging units, okay?
Yeah, but if
But are
if
they on the
20 of the
standard?
people, yeah, if 20 guests picked up an electric vehicle at Hertz that
Right.
stayed at the hotel, well, that's
Yeah.
that's automatically, a recipe for disaster on both sides.
I agree. I agree. I mean, down here in the South, Bucky's is, one of the big players. And, they probably have 100 gasoline pumps at their facility, but they
And what
also
is it,
have 15
five
to 20
chargings?
Tesla
Oh,
chargers,
20? That's not
superchargers,
bad.
you know. The one not too far
That's a
from you,
pretty good
past
proportion,
Christiane, I
actually.
know has at least 100 They just opened it,
It's
and
the biggest one, yeah.
it's one of the
Gulf
big, if
Coast of
not the
Mississippi.
biggest. It's
No,
crazy.
it's
Yeah,
it's it's the
the
big it's
biggest
the
one in
biggest.
Mississippi for sure.
No, it's the biggest one that they've opened so far.
Has it? Okay. But the bottom line is, even if you go there, you got to wait now, what, 30 minutes, 45 minutes to get an 80% charge? At least it's a fun place to go hang out for that long. But, you know,
Yeah,
if you have it at a roadside, on the interstate, one of the stops, how many can you reasonably put in there? And then what are you doing for that 45 minutes while you're waiting for it to charge, or you're waiting for one to become open? And that's
that's the
the
big
thing. I
part.
mean, if you've got a roadside eating establishment, or you want to stop to do some shopping, etc.,
Shopping, yeah.
these things eventually are gonna be there. I mean, if I'm going to the grocery store, I might be in there 20, 30 minutes. I can do a 20, 30 minute quick charge and get not 80%, but I can get enough to make sure I can go home if I'm, you know, but so these solutions are going to come. The other thing too that's coming is just like you have with your phone, you can do wireless recharging. Those plates are coming where you just drive over a source and your car will charge just like your phone does.
Actually, have you ever picked up and felt your phone after you've
Oh
done one
yeah,
of
it's hot
those?
as a pistol.
Yeah, so think about 400 to 800 volts through an inductive plate.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it's coming.
it's yeah. I don't know if it is. I think it
Yeah.
might be coming as fast as the hydrogen car.
Well, the hydrogen cars are there. It's not the adopted format. Okay. Everybody, it's not an EV. So it's a different, propulsion, obviously, but they were available. California had quite a few of these stations. I think Shell was the last one they closed their last one last summer, where you had a hydrogen refueling. But as well as I do, you had, Honda. I mean, Honda had their hydrogen fuel cell vehicle.
Hyundai
Yeah,
did too.
yeah, Hyundai did too. Yeah,
And it was funny because they made a hydrogen, they made an electric, and they made a plug-in hybrid one.
right. But the bottom line is, it's just like, is it VHS or beta?
Yeah, because
Uh,
people don't realize a hydrogen car, uh, which uses a fuel cell to turn liquid compressed hydrogen into electricity and then power the wheels. Hydrogen car has to have a battery pack just as much as a plug-in hybrid does because you cannot produce enough with the fuel cell for acceleration and different things like that. So you have to have a backup with the battery to temporarily store the power so you can store it up so the fuel cell makes it and stores it in the battery so that when you need it suddenly, it can produce it while the fuel cell makes it at the little slow snail's pace.
gotcha. Well, this has been an interesting discussion on a lot of different things. We'll go ahead and wrap it up now, but we'll be doing more discussions like this as the industry continues to adjust to the market. So tune in and join us next time for Shift Happens, powered by Advanta-STAR.